Dr. Rachel Griffiths, and I'm with my father and partner in aquatics.
Dr. Tom Griffiths.
Welcome to the Drowning Files, where each week we share a lawsuit we've been involved in or another true story with suggestions to learn from these tragedies to save lives. What case do you have today?
We get to talk, Rachel and I. And Rachel today asked me a question that I get asked often is, with all your years of lifeguarding at swimming pools and beaches, how many water rescues have you made? And I've racked my brain, and I cannot recall a single rescue that I've made while I was an on-duty lifeguard getting paid to be a lifeguard. Now, having said that, I recall very vividly 3 water rescues that I made just as a pedestrian, not working. The first one was very dramatic. I was working as a diving safety officer in the Mediterranean. We were working with a university project involving 3 universities, uncovering the harbor of Herod the Great that sank into the Mediterranean. And my job was the diving safety officer. We were doing underwater archaeology. And my job was to be on this barge for about 12 hours a day in the Mediterranean over the sunken harbor of Herod the Great, which was constructed over 2,000 years ago. And we had 3 different underwater workstations with 2 buddy groups, 2 buddies at each of the 3 workstations in the harbor, for a total of 6 divers working underwater at about 30 feet for an hour each. And my job as the safety officer was to get those 6 divers in the water as quickly and safely as possible. And after the hour shift, get them out and get 2 fresh divers in there as quickly as possible. We had a rescue Zodiac boat at our headquarters at the beach, just a couple hundred yards away. And I was on the barge with mast fin snorkels, rescue equipment, and a radio. And as soon as I set out 6 divers to go to 3 different stations, shortly after they submerged to go down to use their big vacuums to suck up the ocean bottom to uncover artifacts, as soon as they disappeared under the water and I started relaxing, this one diver pops up out of the surface, rips his mask off his face, and when that happens, you know that is pure panic. So he rips his mask off his face. As soon as that happened, I called into the diving safety team, and I said, there's an emergency out at the barge. Come in as quick as possible. I'm going in now. Hung up the radio. I jumped in with mast fins and snorkels, got to this guy and put him on his back, put his fins on my shoulder, and I had taught all my divers to become rescue divers. Those were the ones that were helping me protect the people in the water. And as I pushed this victim, who was still breathing, but very labored breathing, back to the barge, as I looked up to make sure I was going in the right direction, it was like a scene out of a movie. This Zodiac going at full speed turned in front of us, and another rescue diver jumped out, and we flipped this diver into the Zodiac, brought him back to the headquarters on the beach, and we quickly discovered that he was a diabetic who had a diabetic reaction in the water, and we know that diabetics really shouldn't be scuba diving. So that was a pretty traumatic rescue many years ago.
So is there anything that could have prevented that prior? You're saying if you have diabetes, you shouldn't dive at all?
Yeah, so we were very embarrassed. The country that we were working in, they were very, very upset because this country didn't allow diabetics to be scuba divers. But because the scuba divers that we were working with were from American universities, University of Maryland, University of Colorado, and others, you are allowed to be a diabetic and scuba diver if your doctor approves of it. So I believe that's still the case, but lesson learned here is if someone declares that they're a diabetic on a medical form, I believe their doctor really has to examine them carefully and make sure that this is not hazardous.
So what are precautions to take if you're diving and because realistically, a lot of people scuba diving do have medical conditions and can still do it safely. What suggestions are there to do it safely?
Yeah, it is making sure that you're taking your medication, making sure that you have plenty of rest, and uh, you're eating appropriately, and not being under stress. And now I'm glad you asked me that question, because looking back, this diver was a very nervous diver. I didn't train him. He trained at another university, and he was not a confident diver. And I'm not a physician, but I bet you his stress levels were high enough to trigger this diabetic reaction. And that was the last time he dove with us. He became a land archaeologist on our tour of duty in the Mediterranean. We switched him from the water to the land, and he agreed with it, and he didn't fight it because he admitted he was a very nervous diver.
In terms of any water activity, looking for nervousness and anxiousness, whether you're a supervisor or a person in the water, can be helpful because Lake White with Starfish Aquatics Institute developed the idea of look for life. So looking for people being relaxed in the water and happy and having meaningful movement. But often when we see incidences of drownings happen on cameras or in other ways, you can see the nervousness, the apprehension, other signs before they end up getting in trouble. So that idea of looking for a nervous diver, recognizing if you're nervous and knowing you need relaxation can be helpful. But looking for that nervousness, whether you're a lifeguard supervising a pool or you're a dive master, identifying that and noticing that can be helpful.
And many years ago, I published several articles about diver stress. Diver stress is exhibited the same way that swimmers do it. Hesitation, trying to get in the water, but you really just can't jump in there and get going. Hesitation, delay, extreme introvertedness at that moment when you're not typically an introvert. In other words, being quiet, being subdued, that's another sign of stress for swimmers and for scuba divers. So signs like that, changes in behavior really can tip the scales and indicate that this person may be a potential drownee. And so that's a great suggestion.
And relaxation can help whether you're learning to swim, a new swimmer, learning to swim, that can help you obtain your skills. If you're relaxed in the water, and you can be patient to let your legs float up and relax rather than trying to get in a back float, that can actually make it harder. So relaxation, whether you're scuba diving or learning to swim or teaching someone to swim is important.